everyone, my name is Ava and I'm an American living in the Netherlands, and today I wanted to share with you some surprising ways in which I think my life has improved ever since I moved to the Netherlands from the United States. And I also wanted to thank the sponsor of today's video, Housing Anywhere. More about them later. For now, come along with me on my walk through various parts of the city while I share some of these things with you. I want to go sit by the water first, so let's do that. Okay, this is what I'm talking about. Check it out. Great spot. So one of the first ways in which I feel like my life has improved ever since I moved is because I have associated less self-worth with my job ever since I moved from the US to the Netherlands. Now, if you meet an American for the first time, or in the US, if Americans meet each other, as they do, then one of the first questions you'll get is, well, where are you from and what do you do? And they mean, what do you do for a living? What do you do to make money? And I think it's really interesting because in the Netherlands, I've noticed that while people still are interested in what kind of job you have, what do you do during the day with your life, this is still different because in the Netherlands, when people ask you that question, first of all, I feel like whenever I meet people, that comes up much later in conversations, as opposed to in the US, that's literally the second question people will ask you. Now in the US, when they ask you that, they're expected to hear a title, and this might sound a bit harsh, but at least the sense I get from the people I talk to is that they want to hear your job title and then they're going to determine how much money you make. So in their head, the reason they asked you about your job title is because they're interested in knowing how much money you're making. Of course, Dutch people also think that way, it's no different, but I feel like that is less intense here, or it is to a less intense degree that people are thinking about that. Because whenever I get asked about my job here in the Netherlands, I also get a lot of follow-up questions like, do you like your job? What does that entail? What do you do on a day-to-day basis? And it's not like an interview or anything, but it's genuine curiosity. People actually want to know if you're happy at your job. That's something people care about here. Whereas in the US, I can't remember the last time someone asked me that. Whenever they ask me, Ava, what do you do? And I tell them, and I don't have a job with an easy title, And once or twice I've tried to tell people what that means because they would just go, okay. And then the conversation would sort of just pither out. And I think the other thing here is, which I alluded to earlier, is that I think people spend their time in a variety of ways as opposed to, I think, in the US. Work takes up a lot of your time. I know I'm generalizing, but here in the Netherlands, a lot of people actually work part-time. So that also means they have time to do other things. People have a lot more vacation days. So I think people here just tend to have a lot more going on in their lives. And so do I now, ever since I moved here. So all of that combined, I feel like I have started to associate less of my self-worth with my job, and I'm really grateful for that. Anyway, I actually think I want to head to the park now, so let's go. So while we're walking there, the next thing I wanted to talk to you about is how ever since I've moved, I've started to value my free time more. And by that I mean, I think I'm just more conscious about my time in general and hence my free time. So for instance, I will plan out my free time in a way that I can see friends. Maybe I want to try out new hobbies, although I keep saying I'm going to try new hobbies and I have yet to sign up for a course. But I think the fact that, well, I've started making these videos ever since I moved to the Netherlands, whereas in the US, I never thought I would have the time to do something like this. I definitely wanted to, but it's only since I moved to the Netherlands that work has really been one part of my life and then my free time the other. So this is very much related to the first point where I feel like I contain work to one side, and honestly at work, for instance, at least my experience has been for my type of job that if you work overtime, everyone is concerned about it. If you do that on a structural basis, people don't want you to be exceeding the amount of hours you're contracted for. And many people work part-time, so it's actually pretty important that they stay within those time limits. So I think that, and with the less pressure on work, associating less of my self-worth with work, I have more free time, I'm more cognizant of my free time, and I can do more fun things, even if that's just walking around enjoying a beautiful day, as opposed to, overworking, working very many hours because my job is everything. I also feel like many Dutch people will ask you about your hobbies, and if you don't have one, I think it would be an odd conversation because every Dutch person I know here just has a hobby. So I know in the beginning when I moved and I had moved just after I finished my PhD, so I wasn't spending, well, I didn't have very much free time because I was writing my dissertation, so I wasn't spending any time doing anything else besides writing my dissertation. But when I moved here, people were like, "Oh, Ava, what do you do besides writing your dissertation? What do you like to do for fun?" And at that moment I was like, I have no idea what you're talking about. So it was an odd conversation, and I've learned from that, and now I couldn't imagine not having that other side to my life. We're almost at the park, but before we get there, I wanted to tell you about the sponsor of today's video, Housing Anywhere. But I'll let editing Ava do the talking. Oh, hi! Sorry, I didn't see you there. This is Editing Ava, and I am excited to talk to you today about Housing Anywhere. So as you know, I am an international living in the Netherlands. That's how I start all of my videos. So as an international living in the Netherlands, I like to share tips from time to time, or as often as possible, about moving to the Netherlands and how you can make that experience as easy as possible. And today, one of those tips is Housing Anywhere. Now, for those of you not familiar with Housing Anywhere is a rental platform, and it is especially oriented towards looking for a house while you're still abroad. So Housing Anywhere's whole mission is to make finding a place to rent as easy and secure as booking a hotel room. Thank you. Yes, I am so glad they're addressing this issue head on, because if you're trying to find a place while not being physically present in the location, then you're really susceptible to scams. And Housing Anywhere just takes care of that, reduces all of those risks for you. And they do that in a couple of ways. So one, the advertiser doesn't actually receive the money until you've seen the place. So that's great. And two, if the place isn't as described in the ad, then you can actually get a full refund within 48 hours of seeing the place. And on top of that, they have a number of nice features, such as you can talk directly to the landlord via this platform, which I think is really special for the Netherlands, because in my experience of renting, I have maybe spoken to the landlord once. So if you're interested in checking out Housing Anywhere, the link is included in the description box down below. Also, welcome to the Netherlands. There are just random mills everywhere in the city. And the next thing I wanted to share is very actual, and that is that I think ever since I've moved, I know that I spend way more time outdoors and actually value outside time. So when we talk about how you have more free time, how I've been more cognizant of my free time, I like to spend it being outside. And it's not just me, I think it's contagious, because a lot of people here tend to do that. Crossing the street probably should look two ways, especially when I'm filming this. So I think that's really great, because in the US, for instance, if it was a sunny day, I never felt the pressure to go outside. And while sometimes I'm like, oh God, it's nice outside, and I haven't made any plans because I didn't know it was nice, and all my friends have made plans, 2 months ago, and here I am on this beautiful day all by myself. So there are times like that, but thankfully not too many. And even when they are, I just like to go out myself. I'm passing a primary school, I think, so wanted to watch out for those kids. But yeah, so I think I'm forced to go out on nice days because everybody else is doing it. And not just that, I think people also value sitting outside, spending time outside. And the way I noticed that immediately was, even when it is freezing cold outside, but if it's not raining, it's dry, you will see Dutch folks sitting on a terrasje or like a restaurant outside. People are extremely into it. And even though it's bad for the environment, what I've seen here is that a lot of restaurants and cafes have these outdoor heaters, and they're bad for the environment, but I really, really like them, because then you could sit outside even when it's cold. And as long as it's not raining, it's totally fine. So I've come to adore that. Oh my God, I'm noticing that I'm getting out of breath by just talking to you and walking. Oh my God, I should really join my wife on one of her runs. Like, she likes to go running on a regular basis, and I sit on the couch and eat pie. Like, bye babe, enjoy your run. And now I kind of feel the consequences of not exercising. I spend a lot of time outdoors, but I don't really exercise. Although this right now could technically count as exercising, so. So I'm at the park now enjoying my outdoor time, obviously, and I wanted to show you these structures that are in this park. And if you Google this park, it's called Redefining. If you Google it, these structures will come up. And I want to know what you think in the comments down below. Take a look. How weird are they? I love them though. They're weird, but also great. Okay, so the next thing I want to tell you about as I walk away from these semi-creepy but wonderful structures is the fact that I think ever since I moved to the Netherlands, I have been less scared in general. And I'm really talking about when I'm on the street or going home at night. And of course, bad things happen everywhere, and I have felt unsafe in the Netherlands as well. But honestly, in the US, I feel like I was in a constant state of awareness, also really frequently very scared. Whenever it was dark, it didn't matter how late it was. Like I heard when I was living in Philadelphia, which is where I lived right before I moved to the Netherlands, even at 5 p.m. I knew people who had attacks on the street, like someone would mug them, so they would jump them, they would get beaten up, and their stuff would be taken from them at 5 p.m. And this was so prevalent in Philadelphia that there was a free walking service. So you could call this number and they would take you from point A to point B. It was not related to the university, it was related to the city. So that's how prevalent it was. And ever since I've moved, I really feel like I can breathe again. And I think maybe in adulthood, at some point, I became so aware of my surroundings whenever I'd walk the street. Not that that ever prevents things from happening. Maybe it does, because I've mentioned that I've been mugged before, also jumped on the street. So that stuff happens everywhere and anywhere, even if you're constantly aware. But I was really very aware all the time, and just that feeling, I would never feel safe enough to walk home by myself at night or take a bike. No, whereas here in the Netherlands, those things are possible again. And maybe in certain areas, I just for whatever reason would not feel as safe. But most of the time, I feel absolutely fine. I was talking to my friends in Philadelphia recently, the last trip that I made there in December. And oh my God, they were even telling me that it was impossible to take the metro within the city because people were getting harassed. There was crimes happening, and it didn't matter what time of day it was. So that was horrifying for me. And you know, sometimes I think to myself, oh, sometimes I get homesick and should I move back to the US? And I don't really seriously consider this because I really love my life here, and I don't think I want to move back anytime soon, at least. I can't imagine. But you know, those thoughts cross your mind when you see friends and family, and then I hear these things and I think I absolutely am not moving back, because I can't imagine going back to that way of life again. Also, all the other things I'm mentioning today, I just can't imagine going back to those things being different. And this is very personal. The sun was really on me over here, so I'm going to continue the walk. So the final thing I wanted to share with you today is something light to end the video with. And that is that I feel like ever since I've moved to the Netherlands, I've been cooking more. And this is obviously a very personal thing that I'm very happy about. But it's not that I'm making really fancy meals or anything. It's just that in the US, because of, well, working long hours into the night, and also having less free time, and also the fact that I think takeout in the US is pretty affordable and groceries is more expensive. So with those things combined, I felt like, well, it was sometimes worth getting takeout. I would do takeout maybe 2 or 3 times a week. So I said sometimes, but what I meant was quite often. And I would cook not as much the remaining time. I think here I maybe get takeout twice a month, something like that. But other than that, I will eat out, but that's because I'm seeing friends, which is very nice, and it's a social activity. Whereas in the US, it was sort of like, okay, we need to eat, so let's just grab some takeout. And I think the reason I like cooking is, first of all, it is great for my wallet. I can then spend money on other things as opposed to, you know, just a regular dinner and lunch even, because groceries here are much cheaper. So it's pretty easy and affordable to make yourself a cheap lunch. Whereas in the US, I would spend money on lunch and dinner quite often. So I think that's pretty great. And also I've learned to try out new recipes, which I think is a nice thing to do for yourself and your family. So that has been nice. I've discovered ottolenghi ever since I moved here. I feel like a lot of Dutch people are obsessed with ottolenghi and ottolenghi recipes. We have a lot of his books. And when we went to London the last time, we even went to one of his restaurants because my wife is a huge fan and I am now a huge fan of ottolenghi. So we did that. And trying out his recipes are fun, and other recipes. So I think the little things that add joy to your life, as well as the big things that I've mentioned in this video with you today. So that was all I wanted to share with you today. As usual, I look forward to reading what you have to say in the comments down below. And until next time, I'm going to go enjoy the great weather.